Hello and welcome to this episode. Within this episode, we're gonna talk about Nietzsche and the Apollonian and Dionysian dichotomy that he created. The Apollonian and Dionysian are two contrasting concepts famously explored by philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche in his work The Birth of Tragedy. And these concepts represent different aspects of human experience and cultural expression, especially in the realm of art and creativity. And we're gonna go within this video first into what the Apollonian is and the Dionysian, and then deeper into the mythological and also partly Jungian lens regarding these figures, and why, in that sense, it would have to be re-evaluated, because there's more nuance there than Nietzsche really highlights in his work. But more regarding that later. Regarding the Apollonian, it is named after the Greek god Apollo, and this aspect is associated with reason, order, harmony, and the arts, particularly music and visual arts. And it embodies qualities such as clarity, rationality, intellect, and the ability to impose structure and form. The Apollonian domain represents conscious thought and the pursuit of logical, measured, and balanced expressions. And in art, it manifests as well-structured, formal, and harmonious creations with clear order and deliberate design. A good example would be classical Greek architecture and sculpture. And from a Jungian lens, the Apollonian corresponds to rational thought, conscious awareness, and the desire for clarity and order, representing the ego and conscious mind. The Dionysian is named after the Greek god Dionysus, or Bacchus in Roman mythology, and this aspect is associated with wine, ecstasy, revelry, and the chaotic aspects of human experience. The Dionysian embodies qualities such as emotion, intuition, instinct, and the dissolution of boundaries, and it is the realm of the irrational, wild, and uncontrollable aspects of existence for Nietzsche. And in art, the Dionysian manifests as spontaneous, emotional, and sometimes chaotic expressions, often involving unbridled creativity and intense experiences, such as the trance-like state of dancers in Dionysian rites. And from a Jungian lens, the Dionysian corresponds to the unconscious emotions and the primal instinctual forces within, representing the depths of the human psyche, which can be both creative and destructive. Nietzsche used the Apollonian and Dionysian as a framework for understanding the contrasting elements in Greek tragedy, suggesting that great art and culture emerge from the tension and interplay between these two forces. And he argued that tragedy, as exemplified in Greek drama, is a synthesis of these opposing elements, where the Apollonian forms provide structure and beauty, while the Dionysian energies bring intensity and emotional depth. Also, from a Nietzschean lens, the Apollonian, which is also associated with the mechanical, atomizing, and individualistic aspects, contrasts with the Dionysian, associated with the creative, communal, and unifying forces. And these opposing forces, according to Nietzsche, play significant roles in societal construction and destruction. However, when we analyze this dichotomy more in depth from a mythological lens, so looking deeper into the figures of Apollo and Dionysus, this dichotomy does not hold up to scrutiny. It might indeed paint a good picture from a more unintegrated state, where reason and instinct are still at odds with each other, creating this contrast. Yet, When we look deeper into the mythological aspects of these deities and their linked rituals, this dichotomy falls away. Even when it comes to music itself, Apollo and Dionysus are both as much associated with the aulos, so the double flute, as much with the lyre. And this dichotomy, both regarding music and the philosophical aspects, have their roots in the 19th century AD. Specifically, the quote-unquote classical interpretation. Particularly the contrast between Apollo and Dionysus, or the concept of reason, symbolized by the Kythara, in opposition to madness, quote-unquote, symbolized by the aulos. But interestingly, at the temple to Apollo in Delphi, there exists a shrine dedicated to Dionysus, and depictions show his maenads playing the aulos, but Dionysus is sometimes portrayed holding a kythara or lyre. And it's worth noting that this opposition is primarily associated with Athens. The situation differs in Thebes, which was a center of aulos playing. Meanwhile, in Sparta, a region without Bacchic or Corybantic cults to serve as a contrast, the aulos was actually linked with Apollo and even accompanied the hoplites into battle. So, from a more modern interpretation, this complexity suggests that it is more intricate than a straightforward duality when it comes to this facet of how, it was depicted and used to be divided symbolically. But that it's more complex is also visible within the linked rituals as well. Apollo, together with the muse Thalia, being the father of the Corybantes and their linked rites. Also, as Apollo the wolf god being linked to wolf warriors, both of which link back deeper in time to the Proto-Indo-European Koryos warrior band, which the following clip from the northern later manifestation of such a Koryos descended ritual shows. Both the Olfhednar of the Norse linked to Odin, god of poetry, war, and frenzy, but also the Corybantes linked to Apollo are known for their war dances, their frenzied states, and intense rituals. The Corybantes were also known as protecting the infant Zeus and Dionysus, and from a Jungian lens, this representing the divine child, which is the first stage of the emergence of the self, the center of the psyche within Jungian psychology, and with it the center of personality. And when we look deeper into this regarding Apollo, from a mythological lens, we can see that Apollo himself is linked to intellect, reason, and the hero archetype, yes, but is also as much connected to the integration of the instinctual aspects as well. Think Apollo as wolf god. So Apollo Lycius, as he is known in this form, in Arkteia, a region in the central Peloponnese, very much shows the other side of Apollo. The Koryos, and thus the Coryobantes, linked to Apollo, that had been incorporated into the Orphic mysteries as well, thus symbolize the start of the integration of the shadow, and with it the rebirth of Dionysus after his initial death through the Titans, which were representing the destructive side of the instinctual aspects of the psyche. So It would be more fair from a mythological lens to depict the Titans as that which the 19th century philosophers would falsely classify as Dionysian in a destructive manner, painting a too simplistic image of the complex nature of Dionysus, the same thing being true of Apollo. What further should be highlighted is that the Titans, who were in the Orphic mysteries linked to reason being caught up by instinct, here represent the unintegrated instinctual state, which also was symbolized by Zagreus, the chthonic form of Dionysus Helios. Zagreus representing the chaotic and destructive aspects of the figure of Dionysus. And Dionysus Helios, the connection to Helios representing the connection to Olympus and also with the sun and with that consciousness. But these destructive aspects of the figure of Dionysus, or the more chaotic aspects, were also represented by the outward rituals of the cult, like the Dionysian revelry associated with the lesser mysteries before the inner journey, which was the focus of the Orphic and Eleusinian mysteries. And within the History of Consciousness course episode called the Mystery Schools, I go deeper into what took place within both these lesser and greater mysteries from the little we know. And also regarding some of the Orphic mysteries. Also, there being a special video regarding this as well that is up on Patreon, that goes into the myths linked to the Orphic mysteries.
Χρύσεα φορμής Απόλλωνος και Ιόπλο καμών συνδικών μης.
The myth of Dionysus Zagreus. All in all, what can be said in short is that Dionysus Zagreus, as much as Iacchus as the third-born Dionysus, represent together also with Apollo what can be called the Jungian Self, embodying both the aspects of the unconscious and conscious mind. Iacchus as the third-born representing the state where both sides come back together. And when it comes to the third-born Dionysus and also Apollo, after they went through their respective rituals, and with this also the initiate into these rituals, they transform from a symbol of the ego, intellect, rationality, and hero archetype versus unconscious, instinctive, and chaotic nature into a figure that combines both into a singular figure. The satires associated with Dionysus also being linked as much as Pan to the wild man archetype, so with it to humanity when not yet civilized, and in a state where this conflict does not yet exist. Often symbolically depicted in some way as a golden age of sorts from a mythological lens, and this is also done through different stories as well. Different metaphors for the same idea. And from a Jungian lens, Apollo at first can be seen as the persona, the part of an individual that interacts with the external world and adheres to societal norms and expectations. And Apollo, in its more shadowed aspects, can represent the overemphasis on reason and intellect to the detriment of acknowledging the unconscious and instinctual dimensions of the psyche, which Nietzsche labels as Apollonian. However, the integration of Apollo into the Jungian self involves transcending this limited archetype. And Apollo's journey through the initiation rituals and the mythic slaying of the serpent mirrors the process of transcending the ego's limitations, going from this hero figure towards the self. And it thus undergoes a symbolic death and rebirth, which reflects the transformation of the ego from a rigid rationalistic force into a more balanced and integrated aspect of the self. And in this state, Apollo also represents things such as enlightenment and the reason and wisdom emanating from the self, especially when Apollo takes on more solar attributes, the sun also being a symbol of the self, both life-giving and destructive, as much linked to consciousness as much as to vitality and instinct. Apollo also being linked to the muses. These could be seen as anima figures, the mediators of, the mediators between consciousness and the unconscious, and with it the self. And in the context of the mysteries and initiatory rituals associated with Dionysus, the third-born Dionysus signifies a profound transformation. The initiate, by embracing this archetype, undergoes a symbolic death and rebirth much like Apollo. And this transformation is essential for the full development of the self. And it entails integrating the chaotic and unconscious aspects of the psyche, acknowledging one's instincts and emotions, and reconciling them with conscious, rational thought. And in that way, the third-born Dionysus represents the liberation of the instinctual, creative, and emotional forces within the individual. And this liberation allows for a more holistic understanding of the self, in a deeper connection with the unconscious. And it also marks the harmonious balance between the intellectual and instinctive aspects, fostering both personal growth, self-realization, and the attainment of a higher level of consciousness. And from a Jungian lens, we also should not forget the anima. In Zagreus' case, this would be Ariadne. In conclusion, Nietzsche's Apollonian and Dionysian dichotomy, while providing a framework for contrasting reason and instinct, unravels when examined from both a mythological and Jungian perspective, and it becomes evident that the traditional interpretation oversimplifies the complexities of these archetypal forces. Both Apollo and Dionysus are intertwined with the aulos and the lyre, challenging the rigid separation between the two archetypes, and the strict distinction between reason, Apollonian, and madness, Dionysian, is also influenced by cultural and historical contexts, with variations in different regions such as Athens, Thebes, and Sparta. And further exploring the mythological aspects reveals, that the Corybantes associated with Apollo play a pivotal role in the development of the Jungian self. They signify the initiation of shadow integration, leading to the rebirth of Dionysus after his initial demise by the Titans, and this provides a more nuanced understanding of Dionysus, contradicting the one-dimensional portrayal of chaos and destruction. And ultimately, both Apollo and the third-born Dionysus symbolize the Jungian self, where unconscious and conscious aspects harmoniously coexist. And they represent the balance between reason and instinct, intellect and chaos, which is the ultimate goal of the individuation process. And in this sense, we can say that Nietzsche's views were thus an oversimplification, and thus a re-evaluation of this dichotomy is needed in our understanding of this, as much as bringing back these ancient rituals. And in a future video, I will go deeper into bringing these rituals back in a modernized manner, as I myself also practice similar rituals myself. And I really want to bring these ancient rituals back. And in a way, with that, the connection to the self.